Hi everyone, welcome to our new channel named Class 11 to 12 Java Pro. This channel would be targeted towards covering everything that you need to know in Java for class 11 and 12. It is specifically targeted towards ISC board, but if you have a keen interest to learn Java, or you might be aspiring to be a software engineer in the near future, then Java would be a very good start to uh, pick up from, and I'm sure you would be learning a lot of stuffs, and this would ideally transport or carry over to any other languages that you might pick up in the near future, right? So, a little bit about myself before starting off. So, I have been working as a software developer at Highland Softwares and have roughly 3.5 years of experience. So, that's pretty much about me. Let's start off with what is programming in general. So you might be wondering, what are we going to learn? I mean, what is this all about? So basically, let me give you an analogy from real life. You want to talk to your friend and convey a story. So what will you do? You will pick up a language, maybe English, Hindi, Bengali, or whatever your native language is, and you will tell the other person in terms of a few lines that particular story, right? And then the other person will understand the story. The other person would be your friend or anyone else. In the same way, if you want to talk to a computer and want the computer to perform a certain kind of action, you would need to choose a language first. Now, that language in our case is Java that we are going to cover, but there are many others language like that, uh, like you have C++, C, you have Python, JavaScript, and many other languages. So, if we are talking about language, let me briefly tell you about there are two types of language primarily. One is low level language, one is high level language. So, low level language is the one that is, you can say, a bit tougher and trickier to write and instruct. High level language is like an English level language, which you can pick up easily and write the instructions in. So, Java is a kind of high level language. Okay, so coming back to the story that we were discussing at the very beginning, if you want your friend to understand anything, you would tell him in terms of pointers and you would choose a particular language like Hindi, Bengali, English, etc. So, if you want to tell your computer, you would pick up a language first. That might be low level language, high level language in our case, and in today's world, we generally use high level language, and in our case, it is Java. Now, once you have chosen a language to speak or convey your thoughts, then you would want some lines, right? In some sentences. So you can draw that parallel as instructions that you write for your computer to understand. So, a set of instructions, when written down, that you can consider as a program. So, the language that we would be using is Java, and the set of instructions that you are going to write in Java would be your program. Now, um, now we understood that what programming is. Now, what does this term OOP stands for? Now, before OOP, I would like you guys to go a bit backward and understand about a term known as paradigm. Paradigm, you would often see this in many textbooks that it's told as this kind of paradigm is used, that kind of paradigm is used. So, paradigm is nothing but an approach of programming. It's not any jargon or it's not any high level stuff. It's a basic thing. I mean, you are trying to program, and the way that you are taking to write that program, that is what we generally refer to as paradigm. Now, there are many types of paradigm. One is procedural, one is modular, and the best one that we generally prefer nowadays in real life scenario is OOP. right? So, what is OOP? The full form of OOP would be Object Oriented Programming. OOP. So, in this terminology, you would be noticing that there is one keyword named object. So, a programming language, a programming paradigm which introduces or writes everything in terms of classes and objects is what we call as OOP. Now, if you don't understand it right away, don't worry. We'll be picking up things as we go along and we'll be discussing about them as well. Now, once you have a set of languages, so let me write it down for you. Program is a set of program set of instructions to let computer know of what to do. And for that, we need a language to uh, that is Java in our case, right? Okay. And OOP is object oriented programming. Now, if you see that there is a new keyword named object. What is object? What is class? Object oriented programming has everything to deal with class and object. These are the two primary things that you need to know at the basic to understand everything about OOP. Now, what is a class and what is an object? So what is a class? Now, when you write a program in OOP paradigm, you would want them to write in terms of classes and objects. So let me draw an analogy or parallel to the real life example. For example, um, you want to you are talking about a car in general, right? Now, a car has various makes or brands, right? It could be a Tata car, it could be a Hyundai car, or any other mix. Now, essentially, all of them are at its primary core a car, right? So the class would be a car, and you can think of the object as Tata, Hyundai, etc. Right? Just for simplicity's sake, we are keeping it this way for now. Now, basically, now we already told that you have to write a set of instructions to let the computer know of what to do. Now, what are these instructions that we are gonna write, and how are we gonna represent the same? So basically, we are going to represent the same in terms of classes and objects. So let's suppose we have the car. So what are the attributes of that car? A car might be having wheels, it might be having a specific speed limit, it might be having a type, that is two wheeler, four wheeler. In case of car, you don't consider two wheeler as a car, although. But let's consider that you have a four wheeler, you have buses, you have vans, whatever, and so on and so forth. So that can be a type. And then you have what type of car? That means hatchback or sedan or whatever. These are the things that you generally find when you hear about the car. That what kind of how many wheels, what is the maximum speed, what is the type, and so on and so forth. So these are basically the attributes, or these are basically the markers that you can uh, use to identify the components of a car. So these would essentially be the attributes of the car, right? Attributes or the properties of car. And generally the activities that the car can perform, or the actions that the car can take, they are known as methods or functions, right? For instance, your car can be driven. So drive is a function. Then you you can increase the speed. Increasing speed is a kind of activity that you can do, right? So etc. These are the activities. So we have a car. How do we identify the car? We identify the car by its attributes or properties. That means how many wheels does it have? What is the maximum speed that it can have? What is the type of the car? And etc. Right? And then once we have the car in action, then we have to do something with the car, right? So those activities would be uh, denoted by methods or functions. That means you can drive the car, you can increase the speed of the car, etc. So so this is a generic car or a class that we have in action. Once you have a class, then you would ideally want, or you would generally see that you have various types of cars, right? You have Tata car, Hyundai car, and many other makes, right? Now, um, so these Tata cars, Hyundai cars, this would ideally be the objects. That means car is your blueprint, the structure that the car essentially have, the attributes, properties, and the generic functions. And the objects would be a Tata car, a Hyundai car. So this, in essence, is the structure. This, in essence, is the actual car in action, right? I think we are clear on what is a car and what is an object. Now, as soon as you have understood about class and object, you know most of the background stuff of object oriented programming. That means everything that the programming language deals with is in terms of the objects or class. And why is it named as object oriented programming and not class oriented programming? That is because the uh, actual thing that you will be using is the object, not the card, not the class. Because class is just a blueprint. Object is the actual make of it. And you are seeing the objects around you. You are not seeing a generic car, right? When you see a Hyundai car, you see a Tata car, you are not going to call it as a car. You are going to call it a Tata car, Hyundai car. So Tata is the identity of that car, right? So object is the identity. Class is just a generic overview that okay, hey, a car does have these functionalities and does have these properties or attributes. So that is why whatever we would be dealing with is objects that we see in real life. And let me tell you a fun fact. Object oriented programming helps you to program and think in terms of whatever you see around in your surroundings in day to day life. You don't have to go in a different sphere to understand object oriented programming. You look outside your window, you look at classes and objects, right? So that's the thing. Now, uh, now we know that what object oriented programming is. Everything that revolves around object. Object is what? The real life instance of whatever you see around yourself. Now, in terms of our language, also, when you try to speak with a friend or any other person, you have to follow, you have some nuances in your languages, right? So, in a similar fashion, object oriented programming is pillared on a few uh, aspects or a few things that you definitely need in order to write your program in object oriented fashion. You might even not be knowing, but that is in action as you are writing the program. So, first would be encapsulation. So, first would be encapsulation. Hey, My keyboard is malfunctioning a bit. Please bear with me. What is encapsulation? Encapsulation means you have these attributes, you have these methods or functions all in one place, is essentially what encapsulation is, right? You have attributes plus methods is what encapsulation is. Or you can also call it class is um, class or object is encapsulation in action, right? So this is the first pillar, right? So this is the first pillar that we understood. Now the next pillar would be data abstraction. So what is abstraction? So this is also related to encapsulation. You already know what data abstraction is. I just need to uh, make you guys look at it in from a different angle so that you understand. So what methods of function is, let's suppose you can increase the speed, right? That is a method of that particular class of car. Now, how are you going to increase the speed internally? That is not the necessity for you, right? Internally, how is the car increasing the speed? That is not what you see when you do the activity. You just press your pedal and you increase the speed. You just shift your gear and you increase the speed, right? You don't need to know how the mechanism is going under the hood. So abstraction is exactly the same thing. You don't need to know how the functions are working. Someone who would be using the car would increase the speed by following the manual. He does not need to see whatever is going under the hood. How is actually the increasing of speed happening in the car? Abstraction. And as the name suggests as well, you are abstracting the internal implementation and you are just giving as much as is required to not make the whole system so much complex that the other person is not understanding only how is it working. So that is encapsulation. So basically, encaps that is abstraction, my bad. Uh, Now, encapsulation and abstraction are a bit, what do you call it? A bit related in a sense. Why? If you ask me why, I would say that data abstraction. Where do you find abstraction? Abstraction you would find generally in methods or properties, right? Now, where are they? They're in the class. Now, encapsulation is related to the class, right? So you are encapsulating the properties and methods in a class. So data abstraction is also somewhat linked to encapsulation, right? Don't show the internal implementation. That is what data abstraction is, right? Then we have modularity. So this would be a little bit interesting. So what is modularity? Module, as you know, uh, that you have small chunks of many things. Now, what happens is, let's suppose you are conveying the same story to your friend, but it has many parts in it. Now, if you go on speaking in a particular flow and you are telling everything one after the other, your friend might not understand, right? So, what you want to do is you want your friend to get engaged with you, to be connected with you as long as you are narrating the story. So, what you do is you uh, divide your story into different paragraphs or different sections or chunks, wherein first you tell that, okay, hey, I went to this place, this is how it looks, blah, blah, blah. and then you say these are the destinations, and then you talk about the hotels and stay. So everything is a different chunk if you look at it clearly, or if you observe it from that lens. So modularity, and the same thing, you are writing a program, right? So we're writing many instructions now. Some instructions could be clubbed together and formed into a module. Some instructions could be clubbed together and formed into another module, just like you did in your essay, or while you are conveying the story, narrating the story to a friend. You are dividing it into chunks or paragraphs. The same way you are dividing your set of instructions into chunks. And as you go on chunking those instructions, you keep the logically related instructions together, right? So that we are calling as modules or methods. So basically, you have many instructions in a method, and you see that it is getting boring, and they're not tying up together. So you would better divide it into smaller parts, so that if you have to come back and change anything, you will understand that, hey, I don't need to go through this long length of passage. I would just go on to the passage named this particular stuff. So it makes programming, it makes narrating your story to your computer easier, because you have many small chunks or modules or methods, right? So this is what modularity stands for. Now there is another important term, that is inheritance. Inheritance is, as you might have guessed, many of you might have guessed, that it has a generic meaning that we hear in our day to day life. Inheritance means you inherit something from your elders, right? You inherit property, you inherit behavior maybe from your elders. So that is what it means is. So as we were discussing that in object-oriented programming, everything you can relate with your real life world, right? So we were talking about car. Now, a particular car can have these many attributes and these many properties, or I'm sorry, these many methods. Now you wanted to bifurcate that car into two other categories. One is sporting car, and one is generic car, right? So what you are going to do is you need all those, but these properties are common to the sporting car and the generic car, right? So what you would need is you would again need to rewrite these things in the sporting car and the generic car. Now, so as to reduce your effort, inheritance is there to help you. Just like you have certain characteristics in your dad or mom, and you got them as inherited in yourself, right? You inherited them in yourself. You also act somewhat similar to them. So basically, you have inherited their actions, you have inherited them in those particular aspects. In a similar fashion, sporting car and generic car can also inherit from their parent, that is car. So car would be the parent, car would be the parent, or we also use another term super, or we also use another term base class. And you have two other children, two other categories wherein you don't need to write the common attributes and methods. You can just inherit from your car, right? You necessarily have not performed those methods, or you necessarily don't have any idea about them. You have not done anything, you just got it from above you. So it's inherited by the sporting car and your generic car, right? So this is inheritance in action. What is it? So this is inheritance. And these are, by the way, known as children, child class, child classes, right? You are the children. Sporting car and generic car are their children, and they don't need to write anything that were there in their parent, that is the car. They have inherited that, right? Now, the last but not the least is polymorphism. So, polymorphism means many forms. What does that mean? So, many forms mean this is a little bit advanced right now, but let me try to make you guys understand even still. So, you have your dad act in a certain way, or let me talk in terms of the car only. So, you increase the speed. So, the car increase the speed, this parent car increase the speed in a certain form, right? So when you are inheriting those in your sporting car and the generic car, you also essentially increase the speed in a similar fashion as your parent car, right? Now, in your day-to-day life, you would be seeing that every car is not increasing their speed in the similar fashion. Maybe they are doing something different under the hood. That is quite possible, right? Everyone does not behave the same, right? So basically, in that scenario, your child classes can have a different set of instructions to increase the speed. That in action is polymorphism. That means many form. In essence, your uh, parent car is increasing speed logic, and your sporting car and generic car, those are the child classes, their increasing of speeds logic would should ideally be the same, but you wanted a different behavior specifically for your sporting car because it increases the speed differently, right? Then you can have that in your sporting car. So what you saw is increasing speed in two different forms, right? That is why we have written it as many forms. That means your parent car increases speed differently, and you, as a sporting car, increases your speed differently. Both are increasing their speeds. The behavior is the same of wanting to increase the speed, but under the hood, the instruction or the way they increase the speed is different for your sporting car and your parent class. That wraps up the crux of today's session. So let me try to reiterate whatever we have read. And also let me try to rearrange the things for better understanding. So at first we learn about what is a program. What is a program? Program is a set of instructions to let computer know of what to do, right? You want your computer to perform certain kind of actions. So you tell computer that, hey, these are the set of instructions I give you, and accordingly, please do perform and give me the result. And while you are instructing your computer, you want a language in which you can write the instructions. You can draw parallel from a real life, that if you are going to narrate a story to your friend, you are telling him or her the story in terms of a few sentences, and the language that you pick might be English, Hindi, Bengali, or whatever. So same way, the language what we are specifically focusing on in this uh, whole series would be Java, and the set of instructions is actually the program. Now you know how to tell the story or instruct your computer, but you want to tell it in a way that you understand, or you want to tell it in a way, uh, in an approach that you can relate to with your real life. So the program paradigm or the approach would be object oriented programming. That is the most widely used approach. And here you are seeing everything, every real life entities in terms of classes and objects. Now, class is just the blueprint. That is not tangible enough that you can use it directly. That is just the blueprint, the attributes or the properties. That means whenever you are talking about, let's suppose for a car, whenever you are talking about a car, you think about the attributes or the properties. That means how many wheels, speed, type, etc. And for the methods or functions, you think about how is it driving, how is it increasing the speed, etc. So these are the generic things, and if you club everything together, the attributes and methods uh, in a shell, then that shell is what we called as a class. And for tangible objects that you see around yourself, that means the car types or the car makes that you see around yourself, those are Tata, Hyundai. These are the objects of that particular car, right? So now, for any kind of paradigm or approach, we have to know a certain kind of ground rules, right? So these ground rules would be the pillars of OOP. That is the last thing that we read about. So first thing would be encapsulation. So the shell that we were talking about earlier in class, that you encap that we have attributes and methods encapsulated in a kind of blueprint, that this process in action is encapsulation in action, right? Then we have data abstraction. Like this generally goes with the methods. For now, you can understand it in terms of methods. So whatever you wanted to do, however you wanted to increase the speed, that you need not know. You just need the button to increase the speed, and you press it and your speed gets increased. So abstraction is hiding the internal implementation of how actually the speed increment is happening, but just giving them the outside layer or the interface, outside interface, to actually go about doing the stuff. That is abstraction. Then we have modularity. So you tell the car to, or your computer to perform certain activity. Now you have various, many sets of instructions, but you see that they could be divided. Why do we want to divide? Because you want to figure it out later on easily and make it more readable so that other person feels interested, and they can understand and come back to it if they want to. I mean, you have written you have written two paragraphs, let's suppose. You could have clubbed them together and written one single paragraph, but why did you break it up into two paragraphs? Because you wanted them to be separate, because they are slightly different and they could be written in different paragraphs, so that there is a context of every paragraph. Similarly, in modularity, you have different methods or modules wherein you will chunk or groupify certain kind of instructions to make understanding better, to make readability of the code better, so that you can come back later on and change any specific part. You don't have to go through the whole set of instructions. You will just go to that particular method and you will change the lines or the sets of instructions, and boom, your work would be done. So that is why we use modularity. Then there is inheritance. Inheritance is very similar to what you see in real life. So it is basically you are inheriting activities, you are inheriting characteristics, traits, property from your parent, right? So the term that we generally tend to use is the parent, super, or the base class. All are same. Anything you would be seeing any textbooks, and when we are bifurcating them down into actual tangible other categories like sporting car and generic car, you again need to write the same thing all over again. But you don't want to do that hassle. You just inherit it from your parent car, and you have those attributes and methods in you without writing a single line of instructions. So that is inheritance in action. And then you have polymorphism while you were inheriting the stuff, no? So everyone doesn't, I mean, everyone doesn't have the same activity as the parent, right? So you do want some uh, classes to behave a bit differently, right? So let's suppose in our sporting car we wanted to increase the speed in a different fashion. So over there you can have a different logic for the increasing speed, and you would only write that increasing speed. Let me clear it out over here. You may ask that, hey, in case of sporting car, we wanted to increase the speed differently, right? But we wanted everything else to be the same. So over here, do we need to write all the informations from the car just to write the logic for increasing speed differently? The answer is no. You only need to write the logic for increasing speed, and you don't need to write anything else. So, and anything other than that which you want to use from the car, that are already there without even writing a single line of code. So that is uh, polymorphism in action. That is many forms. Your parent class was increasing the speed in a particular format, and your sporting car is increasing the speed. That means the same activity it is trying to perform as your parent. Both are increasing their speed, but they have different forms or different format of increasing the speed. That is what is polymorphism is. That wraps up our uh, first lecture or first series, fun talk, whatever you can call it. If you have any kind of doubt, or if you don't understand any part, if you want me to elaborate a few parts, question and answers, whatever comes in your mind, just do let me know, and I will try to incorporate the same in the next video, or even try to uh, clarify the same in the comment section. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day. Bye.